Let's bring in the man who covered the game for JAKIB Sports. Of course, John McMullen joins us every week, and he joins us now from Dallas. John, I would say this is an up and down game, and you can just look at the turnovers that hurt the Eagles that led to 20 points from Dallas, and the big bomb to T.Y. Hilton and a couple of those turnovers late spoiled the fun on Christmas Eve for everybody. But what does this loss mean to you?
First of all, it was certainly about the turnovers. And the one thing, if you think about the Eagles, they've basically gone wire to wire this season, leading in turnover ratio. Now, all of a sudden, they're behind Dallas after sort of this -3 performance. And I look at Gardner Minshew, they got more than they could have asked for from a backup quarterback. I mean, Gardner played very well. Anytime you can generate that type of offensive yardage and points with a backup quarterback, you should be able to win the football game. And I look at those specific turnovers. Wes Watkins has got to fight harder for both of those picks. I mean, you can say Gardner stared him down a little bit in the J-Ron Curse interception. That's fine, but he's got to fight for that football. The Boston Scott fumble, Gardner will get credit for it because the quarterback always gets credit for those mishandled mesh point fumbles. But to me, that was clearly Boston Scott's fault. And then obviously the Miles fumble, which was kind of egregious at the end of the game. So that's what did the Eagles in. And yeah, I mean, defensively, Slay's a Pro Bowl player. I mean, he's an all-pro level cornerback. He had a bad game. I mean, T.Y. Hilton got him on that 4th down. He sort of gave him a hat tip and said, great move, T.Y. Got him on 3rd and 30. Looked like he, you think about having Reed Blankenship and Josiah Scott out there. He looked like the one with the miscommunication on the touchdown. It looked like the Eagles were playing cover 3. He didn't carry his receiver down the field. Just a uncharacteristic, poor performance from Darius Slay. So you hope that's kind of self-correcting. But those were the things that kind of stood out. And all these mistakes, and the Eagles still have a chance to win it with a backup quarterback, and they're inside the 20-yard line as the game ends. So I don't think the sky is falling, but I am a little bit concerned with the injuries. I mean, Jalen Hurts, most obviously. We don't know when he's going to be back. It's an SC joint sprain. We know that now. So that's concerning. Lane Johnson looked like a groin. That's concerning. Avonte Maddox, completely. When he left the game, all of a sudden they put CD Lamb in the slot and just gashed the Eagles. So that's the most concerning part to me.
There's more than enough to go around in terms of negatives that led to the demise of the Eagles on this particular day. But talk to me about one positive I kept noticing is that offensive line's ability to keep heat off of Gardner Minshew. I mean, they didn't sack him one time today. No matter what kind of stunts they tried to run and loops, they couldn't get to him. They used Micah Parsons on the inside a lot more so than I thought they would instead of the outside. Still couldn't get to him. I thought the line from tackle to tackle did a yeoman's job in terms of getting Minshew time to go down the field with the football.
Yeah, they did a great job. And I was a little bit concerned when Lane had to leave, and I thought, they would put Micah on Jack Driscoll. They really didn't do that. So, part of it is, I think, Dan Quinn not utilizing correctly. But, you go back to week 6, Nick specifically said, I talked to you guys about it on the pregame show. We said, all right, if you can't block him, read him. Well, they couldn't really do that today because they didn't have Jalen Hurts. So they had to block him, and they blocked him, and they deserve credit for it. That offensive line is tremendous. It's the best in football. 3 Pro Bowlers, 2 alternates, 100% from Jeff Stoutland University as far as, postseason potential being Pro Bowl players. So, yeah, I mean, that's the best group on this team. It's the best group in this league, and they played well. And that's why you can generate Like I said, don't get me wrong. I think Gardner Minshew did a heck of a job, but there aren't many offensive lines where you can put the backup quarterback and say, we're going to get 442 yards of offense. And that's what the Eagles did today.
Mm-hmm. John, I'll say this. I can understand why Micah Parsons didn't move over on the other side on Jack Driscoll, because, Micah he's a phenomenal athlete, but he's also an effort guy. And it's very rare that you see guys, that have the combination of both. A lot of times guys who lack, total skills and total talent will be an effort guy, knowing that they've got to go 100 miles an hour at all times in order to get there. Guys who have talent, they know that they can beat you with a variety of moves and with their athleticism. Micah Parsons is a guy who has both. And when you're playing against a guy like Jordan Mailata, I've noticed this, he doesn't finish plays when he's blocking in pass protection. And I have a real problem with that. If the play is going on, I don't give a damn if Jalen Hurts is running out of the pocket or whether Gardner Minshew is running out of the pocket. If you didn't hear a whistle, that means the play is not over. That means you keep blocking. There was a couple of times where Gardner had to get out of the pocket, and because Micah kept taking an inside charge, he kept pushing him out to the left side. And because he was leaving the pocket, all of a sudden Jordan Mailata just gave up on the play, and Micah Parsons takes off and runs, and now he's chasing. He catches up with a guy that he knows that he can catch up with. Instead of Jordan Mailata just getting on him, staying on him, laying on him, mashing him, or pancaking him. That is something that has to change, because when you play against really good pass rushers, they don't stop. They don't stop until they hear the whistle. And he has to play that same way. So there was no reason to move him over there on Jack when he knew that he could make hay and wreak havoc, on Jordan Mailata, because he's not going to play the whole darn play.
Well, I meant as far as finishing, and obviously he wasn't able to finish. And anytime, he's a really good player. I mean, if we're talking defensive player of the year, he's probably fallen behind Nick Bosa, but he's on a very short list to be a potential defensive player of the year. So anytime you can get out of Dallas in that environment, not giving up a sack to Micah Parsons, I would consider that a win. I think a lot of people forget Jordan is still learning the game because he's so good. And he's taken a bit of a step back this year from last year, but I think that had to do with his own shoulder injury. Remember, when he got hurt early in the season, the Eagles were fearful that was a season-ending injury. So he's been fighting through pain throughout the whole season, and he's had range of motion issues. He's had strength issues. He's slowly regaining that, and I think he's gotten better and better as the year has gone on. He still struggles sometimes with speed rushers, and that's Micah. So if you're telling me Micah Parsons going to line up over Jordan Mailata and he's not going to get a sack, I'm going to take that and say that's a win. But I think you got to go way down the list when you talk about reasons to lose this game before you get to the offensive line. I think the offensive line did a heck of a job against, from a pressure percentage standpoint, Dallas is better than the Eagles. And they didn't get home once. That's pretty impressive.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, he's a reason why. I'm just, when you look at how plays wind up, how they play out in the end, okay, you have to look at that, because that's the difference between maybe Gardner being able to scramble for a first down or buy time to get the ball down the field and not. And, listen, if you're going to make this guy, your left tackle, and you're going to pay him what you paid him, at some point in time, I know for a fact that, the offensive line coach has talked to him about this, because it's not the first time that it's happened. I've seen it happen on a number of times where Jalen Hurts will get out of the pocket, and Jordan will see him out of the pocket and give up on his guy, and his guy will go and make a play. You got to play all the way through. And I'm just making this is one of these games where you begin to break it down and you begin to break down the little small details of the game, because the small details of this game is really why they lost the game. Now, I'm not saying, him not finishing the play is why they lost the game, but to your point, Quez Watkins not fighting for balls the way that he has to. Okay. Darius Slay making mental mistakes, uncharacteristic for a guy who's been in the league as long as he has. You got, Jordan Mailata, in my opinion, not finishing plays. The game is so the dynamics of a football game, especially when you're playing against two teams that are so evenly matched, even statistically, the difference between winning and losing is so minuscule. But when you begin to add up the little small things, one after another, after another, after another, after another, then you throw on top of it 4 turnovers. Now you put yourself in a position where all of those little things become a huge thing. It becomes a molehill. And if they don't get it fixed now, it's going to be a problem down the road. You have to finish. And I'm not saying that it's Jordan Mailata's fault. I'm not saying it's the offensive line's fault. They did a phenomenal job, to be able to stop this Dallas defense from getting a sack whatsoever. But at the other end,
there's always stuff you can point to. Like, I always say I'm not a stat guy to begin with, because I think football is a game that isn't as clear cut as black and white as baseball, say, where, it's just batter versus pitcher and you got this large sample size. And, everybody's going to be happy and say, oh, the Eagles got 6 sacks again. For instance, I thought they weren't as disciplined in the pass rush, and they let Dak Prescott, who's not Justin Fields, leak out a little bit too much and do some things with scrambles that typically they would not do. But I will say, from talking to Jonathan Gannon all the time and Nick Sirianni all the time, they're both on the same page. Other than the scoreboard, the two areas they want to win are turnover ratio and explosive plays, the explosive play battle. And if you win those 2 categories, you're going to win the football game. Well, they were -3 in turnovers and they lost by 6 points. I mean, all these issues we're talking about, Seth, if they're even in the turnover ratio, they don't even have to be +3. If they're even, they win the football game.
Agreed.
So you're never going to play a perfect game. And I nitpick as much as anybody. But 4 turnovers sticks out to me like a sore thumb in this game.
John, I want to talk about Minshew a little bit with you. A 2-part question. Number one, listen, it's hard to complain. The guy throws for 355 yards, but it looked like he was determined to play a very safe game, and this is where you missed Hurts. Hurts would hang in there a little longer and make a play, obviously because of his athletic ability that Minshew does not have. Did you think he bailed out on a few throws too soon? And, of course, the second part of this question is now, where did they go with this Hurts thing as it pertains to Minshew needing 1 win? And maybe Jalen needs another week to rest, and that would put them under the gun for one last game of the season to get that number 1 seed. So first, tell me what you thought of Minshew and the way he approached this game.
Yeah, I mean, this is Gardner Minshew, right? And he's a quick processor, gets rid of the football on time. He's very accurate with intermediate throws. I think you saw it with the in-breaking routes early to Dallas Goedert and A.J. Brown specifically. Then he got Devontae Smith, who had a phenomenal game going in the second half specifically. He was great throwing to those 3 guys. Some issues going, as we said, going to Quez Watkins. But if I'm the Eagles, I'm not concerned at all about Gardner Minshew, especially with New Orleans. Jalen, in my opinion, is going to need another week at least. Gardner, I would be shocked if he doesn't start against the Saints.
Right.
And I don't think the Eagles are scared of that at all. I think they expected to win this game. In a lot of ways, they should have won this game. If Quez fights for those footballs that Boston Scott does his job at the mesh point, they probably win the football game. I thought Gardner did an excellent job. Is he Jalen Hurts? No, of course not. He's not an MVP candidate. But, he probably made a lot of money because he validated the standpoint that he's one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the world. I mean, there's no way there's 32 better quarterbacks than Gardner Minshew. He should be a starter in this league. And obviously he's going to be a free agent. So from a personal standpoint, I think he did well for himself. And then if the Eagles still need that win against the New York Giants in Week 18, hopefully Jalen Hurts, you can push him. And I don't even know if that's the right word. Hopefully he'll be healthy enough to play in that game. But I don't think the Eagles will be concerned at all about going back to Gardner Minshew next week.
Hey, John, put your fan/reporter hat on for just a moment and take me through both scenarios mentally when you sat there and watched that 3rd and 30 play unfold. Because if we were all betting men, betting everything we had, I guarantee you all of us would bet there's nowhere in the world Dallas is converting a 3rd and 30. So take me through that perspective, John, from both as a fan and as a journalist.
First of all, I liked it from Dallas's perspective. I don't know why more teams don't do that, especially in the modern NFL where you can get a penalty, you can get anything. You can get a flag, and all of a sudden it turns it over. And by the way, if you intercept it, just throw the football down the field. It's like a punt anyway. So I like it when teams just don't give up. You know, you see so many teams, 3rd and 30 situation, they'll run a quick smoke screen or they'll throw something underneath because they see the coverage and just give up and punt the football. So I liked it from Dallas's perspective. Take a shot. And you saw it. You take a shot. You know, Slay made a mistake. I don't know what he was looking at. He kept looking inside. He kept looking back. And T.Y. Hilton got behind him, made a great play. One of the key turning points in the game. Yeah, but anytime you get 3rd and 30, that's, 4th and 26 is so big in this town.
Yeah.
Well, here's 3rd and 30.
Hey, John, you talked about talking to Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon all the time. Give us some insight as to how much Jonathan Gannon's play calling changes when Avonte Maddox goes out and Josiah Scott has to come in. Because I really like, and I was on social media defending Jonathan Gannon, if you can believe that today. I love his play calling in the first half. I really did. But the minute that Avonte Maddox went out of the game, it seemed like the whole game plan went out the window. And he got really conservative, and it really changed, the way that he called plays. And I try to tell people all the time, it always comes down to a trust factor, with a defensive coordinator. If he can't trust you as a player, there's certain situations that he's not going to put you in.
Yeah, and I think, I always talk about with the Fangio scheme that the Eagles run, and about 12 other teams in this league run. Communication is the biggest part of it on the back end, and you see it with other teams. The Eagles have played that scheme the best, but when you blow coverages, it's almost always miscommunication. So there's. I theorized that the Eagles are really good at it because they have savvy players, and they have Slay and they have Bradbury, and Slay didn't play like himself today. Avonte's in that category as well. And when you have younger players, and I see it all over the NFL, more so in other cities who play the same defense. I always question those coordinators because to me, and Seth, you can probably talk about this, when you have a young player that's not savvy in cover 2, quarters, cover 6, all these different kind of zone coverages designed to fool the quarterback until at least post snap, those guys have trouble with it. They're not used to it, but they're really athletic. So to me, I would say I would point at another receiver. That's your guy. To me, that's easier for younger players, where the Eagles have, and Bradbury is so savvy as a player. And as I said, Slay, this was so uncharacteristic of him, the way he played. So long-term, I'm not concerned with it. I thought he did some nice things on CD Lamb in the second half. I know one play they showed where he had Kayvon Wallace on him who pressed him. And then Marcus Epps was sort of bracketing him. It's probably too little, too late. But I just think the secondary played poorly as a group. And that hasn't happened that often. I thought they played poorly. And anytime Slay plays poorly, it's a surprise to me. And he played poorly.
John, thank you. We appreciate it. I don't know where you think this leads. I mean, really, it's to me, it's not a big deal. They're going to get the number 1 seed anyway. I think it's practically impossible for them not to get the number 1 seed. But, Seth's worried about a couple things down the line. I mean, I guess the last question is that are you worried about anything as they go down this gauntlet here and they're going to have to face these good teams coming to Philadelphia?
I'm worried if Blaine's not out there. So, if it's significant, I know he had a wrap on sort of his abdomen area. Abante was in a walking boot. I'm concerned if those guys are not out there. They're a different team when those players aren't out there. And we have to see with Jalen. I mean, it's an SC joint, a little bit different from an AC joint, a little bit more serious. My guess is we're not going to see him again until January 21st or January 22nd, because I do think the Eagles are going to. No, here's why. Not because he's not healthy.
No, okay.
They don't need to play.
I think they're going to clinch next week. You don't need him in week 18. The Eagles are going to let him get healthy. But, when you don't see somebody, there's that uncertainty that comes with it. And then you start talking about rust, and that's a long time sitting.
Yep.
So injuries are my main concern.
That would be 4 weeks. Yep.
Hey, John, quick question before you go. If Driscoll came in for Lane, but if you had to make the decision, if Lane is out for an extended period of time, who do you want to see on the right side hold it down until he gets back?
Jack's kind of proven himself. He's more natural. I know Jordan can do it, and Andre Dillard can play left tackle. I assume that's where you're going, Derek. But I think Jack Driscoll is a more natural right tackle. And I know Jeff Stoutland well enough that he doesn't like moving parts either. So he doesn't want to affect two positions unless he has to. And I don't think he thinks he has to.
Okay.
John, thank you so much for hanging out, and have a happy holiday to you. And we'll catch you next week on New Year's Day.
Hey, happy holidays to you guys too. Appreciate it.
Right. John McMullen covering the Eagles today in Dallas. And as we go to break, I think the same thing might happen, that they won't play him the rest of the year, which means he won't have played in 4 weeks until that first playoff game, guys. We'll discuss that in a bit.
That's a big mistake, man.
That's dangerous. That happens.
It's a long time to not be playing. We'll talk about that in a bit. Coming up, Devin Caney will join us to do our Diamond Debate right here on the Lehocky Eagles postgame show back after this.